everybody. We are here tonight with Kazy Tauginas, the writer, producer, and actor from Standing 8. So I'm going to just jump right in. I have a lot of questions for you. We're going to do about maybe 30 minutes of questions from me, and then we'll open it up to everyone else. Sounds good?
Awesome.
Okay, great. So basically, you've done what no one else has done so far in the lupus community, and that is bring a story with the main character that has lupus to the big screen. And not only did you do that, but you actually made the main character a man, which is something that we all know men have lupus, but it's not really spoken about very often. Some people don't even know that fact. So I want to congratulate you on that and thank you. And, you know, in the interview that we did a few weeks ago, we were talking about how a lot of actors have to really like research a role, and when someone has an illness, they either have to spend time with them and read up about it, but you have a very close connection to lupus, so I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, and if you can share with everybody about your childhood.
Sure. Well, I grew up with a mother who has lupus. She was diagnosed before I was even born. It took her a long time to get diagnosed, took years. So it was a interesting situation because I never really realized how sick my mother was until I got older, because she wasn't like she didn't really complain. She didn't really let on as to what she was going through. It's just there'd be moments in time where you'd be like, "Oh, what's going on with mom?" And my earliest childhood memory was of that when I was actually about 2 years old, and my mother was hospitalized with a really bad flare at that time. And of course, I had no idea what that was. And I remember asking my father where she was, and that's actually my earliest childhood memory. And then again, when I was about 8, she ended up going into the hospital again and getting put on inpatient chemo. And at the time, she was one of the first people to get treated with chemo for lupus. And then again, when I was in high school, when I was a senior in high school, she went into outpatient chemo. But it's funny because when you grow up a certain way, you don't really realize that the way you grew up was different until I feel like you reach a certain level of maturity. And for me,
Right.
that really happened when I was in college and I decided to do a paper on lupus, because I figured it would be easy since I knew all about it growing up with my mom. And that was really, really an eye-opener for me, reading about the science behind what was happening and understanding exactly what was going on in my mother's body, and that was like the light going off in my mind to reach like a new level of understanding. But it came in, it came in spurts, and I felt like it took a long time. I lived with this woman for 18 years, and I never even realized exactly how sick she was, because she's old school. She just powers through, like, as much as she could. Even when she had to walk away from her job, in my mind, I'm just thinking that's how people live. Mom can't work for whatever reason. Never once
Right.
really did it dawn on me that, hey, dummy, your mom's too sick to work, right? And it's been kind of a process. So I think in I wasn't an easy teenager to deal with either. So the advocacy and everything that's happening now is probably in my own right the way I'm giving back to my mom for putting up with all of my nonsense when I was younger.
Aw. So I have a question. Something that you mentioned about her just sort of pushing through it and you not really understanding growing up just how sick she was, or maybe not recognizing it. I think that's something that a lot of people with lupus or chronic illness do. I mean, we really try to sort of put on this face that everyone else sees, and maybe the people that are really close to us see like our really bad moments or our bad days. But has your mom ever voiced, especially back then? I mean, I've had lupus for almost 20 years and it was different even when I was diagnosed. But for your mom, going back even before that, when there was no social media, there's no internet, there's really not a lot of awareness. Do you ever think, or has she ever voiced that maybe she put on that tough face because she really felt alone and maybe didn't have anyone else to talk about this illness with or what life was like with it?
I think there's a kind of with my parents, it's been a difficult journey in the sense that I feel like that I don't think they really had much support at all. Family, friends, it's just that, oh, you can't come out to play, just we'll forget about you, right? Kind of a mentality, which to me it bothers me, but everybody, to each their own. So I think with my mom, the biggest thing for her was maintaining a positive mental attitude. And I know that it was probably really hard for her knowing that most of the ladies that were diagnosed around the same time as her had already passed away. Her prognosis was less than 10
Hmm.
years after she was diagnosed. So being the warrior that she is, she really listened to her doctors, and her fight for survival kind of superseded any type of like social aspects to life. It just was like she listened to her body and she did everything that she was supposed to do, avoided crowds, the whole nine, for years and years and years. And I think that is also, I can attribute that to why she's still alive and still um, around and functional. I'm so proud of her. But I think for her, it was probably difficult, knowing that a lot of those people that started out the journey with her were not finishing uh, their journeys at the same time. So and she's always been big on self help and positivity, and um, I think that also contributed a lot to how she was able to navigate these things. Because I know it was not easy. I mean, walking away from your career, walking away from getting a PhD. Both my parents ended up having to do it. They
Right.
both had to put all career aspirations not even on hold. They had to let them go. And I've said it before. I can't even imagine, to equate it to my life, what I would feel like if someone all of a sudden pulled the rug out from my acting career and said, "You can no longer act ever again." How would I feel? Would I function as well as my parents have? Would I, I feel like despite all of the adversity that they've had to face and all the hardships that go along with, you know, um, my father as the caretaker, working a job for the state as like as a high school teacher, and my mother really not being able to bring anything to the table financially. The pressure that my dad had to feel, and then of course having to deal with me. I was such a little meathead when I was younger. So my heart goes out to my parents and anyone who's had similar journeys. I mean, a lot of lupus warriors go through the same thing where they have to let certain things go, and that's part of what I really wanted to address in Standing 8 was not just going for physical effects, but really Standing 8 is more about his mentality and what's going on with him emotionally over physical symptoms. We only were making a 27-minute movie, so I had to kind of address A or B.
Right. Well, you mentioned something really important, and that is with your mom, the mental aspect of it all. And that is for us, the way to keep going is trying to stay positive, and you sort of have this war that you go through on a regular basis of what you want to do versus what your body is letting you do. So, because you touch on that in the movie, can you tell us a little bit about how Standing 8 came to be? Like, when is the very first time you ever had the thought that you want to make this movie, and where did it sort of go from there?
So tracing it back, I it was kind of like multiple stages. It was like first I had a producer and director that I really wanted to work with, Louis Peduto and Brian Kazmark, and um, we decided that we wanted to do a project together, and the goal was to do a smaller project to kind of just be like a warm up to see how well we all work together. And from there, it was like really deciding on the story. And uh, at the time, I knew that I wanted to play a boxer, having a boxing background. I fought in the Golden Gloves out of Pennsylvania, and I had yet to be cast as a boxer, and that was on my to-do list of characters that I would like to play. Um, but then we also wanted to do something that was relevant and socially conscious.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a storyline in mind with Lupus, and one of my co-producers, Antoine Allen, mentioned to me, he's like, I like that, but why don't you just make the boxer have lupus? And of course, I was like, oh my God, that's genius. I was like, yes, that's it. That's the story we need to tell. And when I wrote the first draft, it was the end of 2014, like December of 2014 was the first draft that I wrote. And I remember picking my mom's brain constantly. Like I was like, Mom, so when you were in the room, what did you feel? And then for me, it was really important. Right, the climax of the film comes from me asking my mom, has she ever gotten second wins when when lupus knocks her down, right? When it just comes in and it's just like boom, and she's like done and she's exhausted and she's laid out. Do you ever recover? I've been like, have you ever all of a sudden felt better? Like it was just like, and she said yes, which is what ties into the end of the movie. Is I directly got that from my mother, is the fact that like my mom has been like hit really hard and then all of a sudden feels like, wait, I'm okay now. Like what happened? And I referred to her constantly throughout, the whole writing process. And we went through many drafts, just like you would for a feature film, until we landed on the draft that we ended up shooting. And the film that we shot now is really, really close to the final draft of the screenplay that I had worked on with Brian. Um, so the whole thing was really born out of wanting to do something socially conscious that played close to my heart, which was my mom's lupus journey and the things that my mom went through, like early symptoms, fatigue, joint pain,
Mm-hmm.
butterfly rash. Like these were all taken from my mother's life to put into the story. So um, that was really where the journey started, just out of an idea. And that's how all films are kind of made. They're just born out of like simple ideas that tend to grow. It's like a seed, and you water it and it tends to blossom. And from there, after we locked the story, we felt strong about it. We did a Kickstarter campaign to fund our production, and then after we shot, we had to go back to Kickstarter again to raise more money. And if your listeners don't know, your viewers don't know, Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform where people can actually donate to see your project come to life. And people really just got behind us. I thought it was going to be a lot harder than it was to raise money for this thing, but people I think that the idea of doing something with meaning, not just doing something. I said I want to entertain, but I'd also like to educate. I want to make a project that starts a conversation. Being that it was a 27-minute movie and the original draft was like 20 pages, I felt like clearly we can't cover everything, but let's just tell a story that gets people to think and gets people to get on their phones and said and done. And after we got into festivals and we played around the world, I feel like the film is indeed doing that. I've gotten incredible feedback from people. I had one woman who sent me a DM, and she said she watched the film with her husband, and that after the movie was over, her husband turned to her and said, "I never knew this is what you were going through." And
Mm.
feedback like that just I can't even, how I did what I set out to do, which I'm just really grateful that we were able to succeed in doing that. But
I love that. That's an amazing comment. I mean, something like that, like, are gonna make me cry. Just because sometimes, living with someone or being in a relationship or even friends, like you said, your mom's friends didn't, some of them just didn't get it. Sometimes it's not always the person living with the illness to describe it to someone that they can get it, especially if it's a close relationship. Sometimes they have to see it elsewhere or have an example that is kind of outside of their circle of their life to really kind of bring it home for them. So I think, it's really comments like that that make you realize that what you set out to do, you absolutely nailed it. And I just love that. Um, Something that I want to just jump back a little bit for anyone that's just jumping on. Tell us a little bit about your boxing background and also your acting background, because I know that you had done a couple of things before that came into your life. So if you could just tell viewers really quickly sort of this journey that you went on.
Sure, sure. Well, I fought out of Pennsylvania. I fought in the Golden Gloves, um, which is the amateurs for boxing. Before that, though, I was my sport of choice, like in high school, was figure skating, and I did that through college. And then when I kind of got fed up with the politics of that sport, I ended up deciding to stay in shape because skating for so long just kind of ingrained the idea of like always being in shape to me. And I always had this affinity for boxing, and I always really wanted to do it. And just it's funny how doors tend to open when you put the energy out there. And I ended up at Left Jab Boxing Club in West Grove, Pennsylvania, and I ended up training with Cliff Johnson. And I had a few, I think when all was said and done, I had like 13 amateur fights. I had one really good season, which was 2008, where we had some battles, and I regret nothing when it came to boxing. Boxing was it's probably opened more doors and started more conversations for me than anything else that I've done in my life, other than running a 24-hour diner when I was in my 20s, which was what I was doing while I was boxing competitively. So that's just a whole another crazy story and just a whole other interview
That
talking
could be
about that
another
experience.
movie.
Yeah, it's yeah, the diner. I owned a 24-hour diner, and whoo! Mm, thank God I had boxing. Boxing became my sanity. Boxing became my outlet. That's how I was able to like maintain composure. And not to mention when you have a 24-hour place, people come in that are inebriated and have been drinking too much, and there's often physical altercations that occur. And
Mhm.
luckily I knew how to handle those relatively well, coming from a boxing background. So, I boxed up until 2011. I had my last fight. Um, I tried, when the diner ended up closing due to circumstances outside of um, my own choices. I was kind of forced out. Um, I decided to go back to acting school, and I went to acting school in 2009. And once I graduated, I kind of tried to continue boxing and navigate like the entertainment world at the same time, but it's really hard to worship two gods. So I had to like acting started to fulfill me a lot more than boxing was, and I just had to kind of let boxing go, which was a hard thing to do. But I just wasn't performing well when I was fighting because my heart wasn't in it anymore. My heart was really
Right.
in acting. Um, and I kind of, 2011, 2012, I really focused on, producing. I produced like a feature. I also had earlier I had shot my own short film, uh, and kind of just one step at a time, I started to break into mainstream films and shows. And my first film that I got a shot in was John Wick with Keanu Reeves. That was my first Hollywood outing. And then I ended up getting on the Blacklist and some other New York shows, and slowly but surely climbed that layer cake. And until 2017, where I was cast to play one of the villains opposite Denzel Washington in Equalizer 2. So that was really my break. I would say that opened up a lot of doors. It was a great experience, working with the legend, and not only working with Denzel, but working with Antoine Fuqua, who directed the film. And if people aren't familiar with his work, he of course he directed the first Equalizer, but also known for Brooklyn's Finest, Training Day, Tears of the Sun. Some really really great films. So he had always been in the back of my mind as a director I'd want to work with. And that was one of those few moments in life where you see like dreams and goals land on the same plane as reality. And it's like one of those, just, you don't even feel like it's real life. You're like, wait, is this for
Right.
real? Like, it's happening to me? Uh, so yeah, Equalizer 2 opened up that door, and it's funny because the I felt like the red carpet for Equalizer 2 was going to be like a good opportunity to raise some like lupus awareness. So I just wore a lupus pin on the red carpet, and that's what ended up catching the attention of the Lupus Foundation, and that's how they ended up reaching out to me. Was they saw this guy, this random actor with this lupus pin, and that was just one of those emails that I'll never forget. I got it from Maggie Maloney at the Lupus Foundation, and it was shortly after the premiere. I think a couple of days after the premiere for Equalizer 2, and I'll never forget the verbiage. She was like, first and foremost, we want to know if there's anything that we can do for your mother. And I've never heard anyone say that, ask that, like offer to help my parents ever. That was the first time in last year, summer of last year, that someone was like, "Is there anything that we can do?" And I got really emotional because like before that, my family has always felt so isolated and just kind of alienated within our own family, and just that that we're like frowned upon because whatever, like what can my mom do if she doesn't feel good? She can't attend. Sorry, like it's just it's silly to me, but it's sometimes like you can't get any love at home, right? Like with like the people closest to you are the ones that don't buy your stuff. You know what I mean? It's just funny like that how the world works. But I felt like that email opened up the door to a new family for my parents, and that's their lupus family, because I think they feel really embraced by the lupus community. They've when they went to the gala in New York City, my mom, I I don't think I've seen her so happy. Just to be surrounded by people that know that instantly you guys feel the connection, right? It's just
Right.
there because you all understand each other and you understand what you're going through, and just this thing that just attracts you, and you feel it in your soul. And then going down to the advocacy summit in Washington D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think that was a huge thing, and it makes me really happy because it's making my mom proactive in raising awareness and helping other people who are dealing with the same things as her. I
Well,
think I
I
went
think
off
it's
on a
so
tangent.
important. Like, we're in such an incredible time. Oh, Amy's on from Lupus Foundation, Florida. Hi, Amy. Um, we're in such an incredible time because there is so much awareness. I mean, this is the most awareness I've ever seen in my lifetime of diagnosis with this illness. And for a very long time, I mean, I have no problem, just bluntly saying it, lupus patients and their families were ignored. I mean, they were ignored from the medical community. Because there was a lack of awareness, it was hard to explain this illness to friends and family. No one understands why one day you feel great and you could do everything on your list, and then you're down in your bed for the next 3 or 4 days or the next week. Um, Even in terms of treatments, we've been ignored. So, and those things are getting better. And that's why it's so critical that we have these communities, that we have the nonprofits, we have our social media communities, the people raising awareness, and now we have Standing 8. Which leads me to my next question. Because you've done so well with this film, and I know that you toured different film festivals for 2 years and won a ton of awards, do you have any other ideas of something that you would want to do in the future that relates also to lupus and maybe the film industry?
Oh yeah, I'm in the seventh draft of a feature that deals with a lot of the same elements as Standing 8. I'm not looking to tell the same story again, but I'm looking to tell a similar story because I feel like putting like an awareness film in like the guise of like a sports drama, I feel like can appeal to a really a wider group, right? Because some people are just going to see a film because it's like a sports movie, like, oh, like it's a fighting movie.
Right.
I love this kind of stuff, right? But the message below it is the fact that it's an awareness movie. It's bringing up something that isn't normally brought up, and I really feel like, Standing Eight is just the beginning. I know that there really hasn't been any representation on. I think a friend of mine mentioned that I think a character on Days of Our Lives might have had lupus in the 90s. I think there was one character, if that's the right soap, but it was one of the daytime
I'm not
soaps.
familiar with that. But you see,
Yeah,
it's very limited. I mean,
yeah,
we hear
yeah,
little things here and there, but it's not out there, at least publicly, like in film and TV, as many other illnesses are or have been
yeah,
over the years.
yes, and
So
it's
I
it's
thank you.
been yeah, it has been ignored, and I think the time has come to change that because they say 1.5 million in the states. It's got to be more because it's misdiagnosed so often, and
Right.
you're still looking at medical professionals who still don't even know the effects of their diseases. I mean, it's funny. My mom couldn't even she's on Imuran, she's on immunosuppressant, so she can't go into big crowds. My parents go see if they're going to go see movies, they go see them at 9 o'clock in the morning on like a
Mhm.
Tuesday when nobody else can go because my mom can't be in the crowds. Her doctor won't even write her a doctor's note for jury duty where like 400 people are going to be
Wow.
coming in one day. And you're like what? Like that should be like a no-brainer. Like no, she can't be in a crowd like that. But the guy won't even do it. And this is
I
recent. This
think
is not
that
even.
Yeah, I think that highlights just where we're at in terms of medical care, how sometimes some of us can find these incredible doctors that are so knowledgeable and so supportive and so understanding. And then you have someone like that in this case where, you know, out of all people, who should know about this disease and who should know about these side effects of medication and being on immunosuppressants and how careful you have to be with everyone that's around you and germs.
Yeah.
So that hurts my heart a little bit when I hear things like that because our medical providers are people that we want to go in and trust and be able to relate to and have conversations with and get advice, but also get support and encouragement from. So I'm sorry to hear that, but I will say, especially with how many people I speak to on Lupus Chick, it's not uncommon, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
it
thank
needs
you.
to needs to change.
Absolutely.
Uh-oh. I think
Um,
I lost you for a
and
second.
that's what the great thing is about our communities and this movie. I'm sorry, there's a little bit of an overlap, but for anyone that's kind of jumping on and hasn't watched the movie yet, before we go into questions from everyone jumping in, tell us or tell the audience how they can actually get the film and rent the film from home.
Sure. The film is available on Amazon and Vimeo currently. In June, we will be expanding our release to iTunes and Google Play. But if they want to get it now, they can get it through Amazon Prime Direct and rent it or purchase it. And then Vimeo On Demand has it for rent or purchase for streaming. And then you can just check out the trailer or anything. We have our own Facebook page, Standing Eight Film, site, which is standing8themovie.com, completely spelled out like 8 EIGHT. And you'll see links to Vimeo and Amazon via our website. You can also watch the official trailer on our website. So, right now it's as wide as we can get a digital release, especially once June hits and we expand to those other platforms. Um, yeah, yeah, and then we're having screenings like
Okay.
next week. We'll be screening in Los Angeles at ArcLight in Hollywood.
Well, that's awesome. All right. So for anyone here that's LA based, so I have two more quick questions for you, and then people can start bringing in their questions. Uh, for people like me who are not too athletic or into the boxing sports realm, Can you explain Standing 8, what that means, and why you named the movie that? I know we talked about it a little bit in our interview, but I'd like everyone else here to know.
Sure, sure. Standing 8 count is you when a referee sees you, feels that you've been rocked, and they give you a chance to recover, and they give you what they call a standing 8 count. You haven't been knocked down, but you're essentially like you've been rocked on your feet, and they'll give you a standing 8 count before they either let you proceed or once or they'll call you out. So I felt that Standing 8 was a very appropriate title for our film, because I feel like Dusty Abrams, the boxer in the film, is essentially getting knocked out on his feet, and um, it's like, can he recover? Can he not recover? What's going to happen? It's really there's a lot of metaphors in the film, but I felt Standing 8 was an appropriate title for this because he isn't knocked out, right? Because Lupus doesn't always win, right? But it rocks you. So, and then it's really up to the individual whether you can power through it or not. So I feel like, Standing 8 was definitely like as soon as I started working on the film, I knew that that's what the title was going to be.
I love it. I think it was perfect title, and I just want to ask you, now that you have really been embraced by the lupus community and have met so many other people in addition to your mom that have the illness, what would your advice be, or what would you say to someone that, right now maybe has lost their career and had to give up their career, or is having, trouble with relationships in their family because people don't understand and they do feel very alone because they can't go and do the things they want to do, or they're basically stuck in their house or stuck in the hospital right now.
Yeah. I think I think the important thing to know and realize is that you have a family around you, your lupus family, that understands what you're going through. There's so many lupus warriors that have had, everyone has a unique journey, but then there's a lot of overlap and a lot of people understand what you're going through. Just look at super supportive Sarah, right? The lupus trainer. I mean, she's everywhere. She's everywhere. And that's when she's dealing with her own stuff. And I think that she's just like a beacon, and people like yourself who are there for their communities. And I think that knowing that there is a supportive lupus community, that there are proactive members who are battling this disease in whatever way that they can, I think is so incredibly important for people's mental health, to know that, okay, maybe this side of whatever it was that you were meant to do, you need to put that on hold, but now where do you go from here? And there's so many people that you can interact with and you can talk to that all understand what you're going through. And I think that community is incredibly important. And I saw people come together on the hill, and it was like it was special seeing everyone come together and say, regardless of race, creed, political backgrounds, it didn't matter. Everyone was there for one goal, and that was to get more funding for research. And we showed up, everyone showed up in their capes, and they made a splash on Capitol Hill. People were asking
Awesome.
and commenting as everyone's walking through the hallways, like, oh, they're like, oh, I had a relative who had lupus, or my mom had lupus, or whatever. And it was just, you could just feel that there was, that people they were receiving, like, everyone from the foundation. And I think there's nothing more powerful than not only standing up for yourself, but taking the initiative to stand up for others who couldn't necessarily be there. So, like, everyone that advocates or starts walks or participates in walks, there's so many different things that people can do to be actively combating this disease. And I think that this is like a really welcoming and open community, and the leadership is fantastic. Everyone at the Lupus Foundation is so great and so supportive, and they're really committed to what they're doing. So I think it
Hmm.
just embrace the community. I think that's going to be key. I think staying positive and as hard as it can be, but I think it's easier when you know people can relate to you and you can relate and you can actually have a conversation where people understand what you're going through. I think it's so important, versus like talking to,
I agree.
like a friend who's like, "Oh yeah, man, well, just like power through it, bro. It'll be all right." It's not,
Well,
you know.
our community they're amazing. I mean, I've watched them grow over the last decade, and it's just, it's incredible. And I love that everyone that is an advocate for lupus and has their information online and is putting themselves out there, we're all sort of in these different seasons of our life. And we show like the good and the bad, the times we're in the hospital and the times that we're out and actually able to enjoy a day. And I think it's necessary for everyone, whether they have lupus or not, to see both sides of that. Yes, like we want to go out and enjoy things and be with our friends and family. We want to be able to work, and but then we also need time to rest, and we need time to recover and take care of ourselves. And that's a really important part of this lupus journey, is taking care of ourselves. So for anyone that is out there and alone and is sort of new to this diagnosis, there's so many. I could like rattle off probably like 50 names right now, but just put lupus in your Facebook or in your Instagram, and so many amazing warriors will come up. So I'm going to turn the questions over now to the audience. So if you have a question for Kazi, start typing it in and I will go through them. And I don't know if we'll be able to get to all of them. Kazi, what I usually do on Facebook Lives is sometimes we have way more questions than I can get to. So typically I'll go back afterwards and just write in like an answer if it's like a specific question. So, I mean, feel free to do that if you want. But let's see. I'm going to just scroll through really quick and see if we actually have any here. Sorry, there's a lot of comments so far. You'll have to check them out after we hang up. All right, well, I will wait. Let's see. Okay, so Meg just signed. I saw that Meg tuned in a little while ago. She asked if you were a boxer as well as an actor. And Meg, you can definitely go back and watch the entire interview. But Kazi did touch on that he ran a 24-hour diner, was a boxer, and then went into acting, right? Kazi, did I miss anything in there?
No, you got it. You got it.
Okay. All right, well, I'll let a couple of those go through, but in the meantime, let me just ask you what, oh, actually, we have a question. Hold on. How long did it take to do this film? Like to make it?
Well, so it's interesting. So if you're thinking from inception, uh, when the idea was born, I mean, I'd say that was like December of 2014. We shot
Okay.
in 2015. Post-production took about a year, so we finished in, I'd say about totally finished by like May of 2016, and then we put in a couple of years into the film festivals, maybe 2.5 years, because there's also a delay to that. And then the latest version that everyone is seeing right now is a complete recut of the film. It's different than the festival version that we had. The festival version came in at 20 minutes because when you submit to festivals, you have to come in within a certain time frame.
Okay.
So we had to come in under 20 minutes. So I felt like a lot of the emotional core was kind of, diluted in the fact that we had to just go from scene to scene to scene, and moments of breath needed to be taken. So the cut that's out now, I'd say took us, from start to finish, because we started completely from scratch, took us from about like 4 months to bang that out. So it's been a kind of like an ongoing process with this film. It's because it's gone through like what we would call like a creator's cut. It's gone through stages, but the original like for the original cut, I'd say from inception to finish was about 2 years, a little about.
Okay. So I'm going to hit you with a couple questions here. How's your
Sure.
mom doing? How did your family react to the movie when it came out? And will it be translated?
So the first question was how did my family react? Was that the first?
How's your mom doing first?
Oh, how's my mom doing? Yes, my mom. My mom is doing well. Um, she's always playing a balancing act with prednisone and Imuran, and then because she's been on prednisone for all these years, she's taking drugs for the side effects of prednisone and dealing with all these other issues. But I think overall, she's doing really well. She listens to her body. If her body says, "Hey, not happening today," she says, "Okay, well, I guess it's not happening today." And then that's how she rolls. I'd say probably the most annoying thing right now is the fact that her doctor, who supposedly has her back, won't write her a note that she can avoid a crowd, for jury duty. Um, but we'll get through that. But just like every other warrior, she's got good times where everything is working fine, and then some days she's just experiencing a ton of joint pain and really can't move around a lot, and it's different from day to day. But overall, she's doing great, and thank you for asking. Um, how did my family react? So I only have uh, I don't think the rest of my family has seen it other than my parents, uh, which kind of circles back to the whole support thing. Um, when my mother watched it, when she watched the latest cut, she cried. She cried. She called me and she thanked me for making it. And my father, he co-signed. He was just like, "This is good." He's a man. He chooses his words wisely. This was good. You know,
Mm.
but they were both very grateful, and they're both very happy with the new cut of the film as compared to the festival. They loved the festival cut as well, but this one I think was just something special, especially because I was able to bring in Jace Harley to work on the music. I felt like that was one thing about the previous cut that needed to um, the movie needed a flavor, needed like an urban flavor. And Jace Harley, who's an indie hip hop musician, gave us a lot of his music to use in the film. And I felt that really gave the movie a different tone. So that my parents
Hmm.
they really, really liked it. And then I think there was a third part of the question.
Oh, so will the movie be translated?
Okay, into what language? It's in Spanish now. We can
Any?
watch. You can
Okay.
It's translate. We have subtitles, not translated, where like there's like a dub where there's like "Hola, cómo estás." There's none of that. Subtitles only. So right now on Vimeo, you can watch it in Spanish subtitles.
Okay. So someone asked when again, and I just want to repeat it. You can watch this on Amazon, and also on Vimeo. And your website is Standing Eight, eight spelled out. It's not the number. Standing8 themovie.com.
Yeah,
Correct?
correct.
All right. Awesome. Maybe some of your other family members did see it and just don't want to say anything because they realize they weren't being very nice. So hopefully they watch it. That's all I'm going to say. I think
I'm not
sometimes,
worried.
and I'll just give you an example. Um, you know, I come from like a very loud Italian family, and they didn't understand how one day I was fine and the next day I was in bed or in the hospital. And it really wasn't until I went on chemo that their ears kind of perked up and they were like, oh, wow, then she must be really sick. It's something with the word chemo, like really perks up people's attention. And they understand that, no, we were actually sick the whole time before we were ever put on the chemo. But if that's what it takes, for something like that to get their attention, and I'm hoping for the friends and family members that sort of distance themselves, I hope that this movie can do that for them as well. You know,
I hope so.
it's
I
it's
hope so.
something that a lot of us deal with, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of like a delay, so I apologize. So let me see here. I actually have a friend of mine from Florida on here, Christy, and she's an actor. She's an actress in South Florida, and
No way.
I don't know, Christy, you can comment. I don't know if she had to completely give it up, but I know that because of lupus and how severe it got, I know that it did affect her career. So what would your advice be to someone like that, that is an actor and that's really their passion, but maybe being on set for however many hours a day or committing to a movie isn't something that is possible?
Yeah, that's well with acting, it's always the time commitment is a thing because you have to be there, and some days there's days that take like 16 hours. So I think it really depends on where you're at as far as um, your own personal lupus journey. But if it turns out that doing those really long days are just not possible. I mean, there's other avenues that actors can take. There's always theater, and depending on the level of theater that you're doing, there's always a way to, um, in rehearsals, especially, you're not active like the whole time. It might be like a 4-hour rehearsal, but if you're not necessarily the lead in the show, you're not going to be on your feet the whole time. So there's always options, and
Right.
I've always, no matter what anyone's creative position is, like I feel you can be at any level where you can decide you're going to create something for yourself. Um, and I always encourage my acting friends to do that because I feel like that's always kind of like an intimidating thing to do, to kind of decide to take your career and put yourself in the driver's seat. But I also think it's probably the most empowering thing that a creative person can do is putting themselves in the driver's seat, because then your performance and what you're doing isn't really left up to the opinion of others, it's left up to you. So I would suggest, especially with someone who has lupus, we need more lupus content. So Christy, if you got a
Yeah.
lupus idea, you want to make a little film or a web series or something that's not going to cost millions and millions of dollars, go for it, because the community will embrace you, and they need more content. We need more content that puts these stories out there. So that would be my advice.
That's something that's really important for anyone that has lupus or a chronic illness, and we talk about it a lot on Lupus Chick. It's just for a lot of us, our what we originally went to college for, what our career was, sometimes has to get changed or tweaked. And I always feel like there is a way to take something that you love and maybe just rework it, sort of fits in this new normal that you have, like once you're diagnosed. It'll come to you, right? Meditate on that. Maybe writing is actually in the cards. So I agree with you on what you said. So I have one more question here. Hold on, let me find it. How does your mom feel about how her illness affects you or your siblings if you have any?
Well, I was an only. She miscarried before me. The doctors told her not to try, but she did because she's stubborn. Uh, I honestly, I think overall, I think she's just proud of me for taking a stand. I think that I've never she's never asked for any pity. She's never that's not in her nature. So I think that at this point in time, she's just really happy that I've gotten involved with the community, and doing what I can do to advocate, and putting in my 2 cents where I can. And I think that that means more to her than anything else. I know, like I said, I was a difficult teen. Um, I was very into my own, you know, and I probably gave her a harder time than I should have back then. But it is what it is. But I think now, in where we stand now, I think it's just it's all love, and it's all about trying to rise to the occasion, and do what we can for our lupus brothers and sisters.
I like that. Well, I just want to thank you. You set the bar very high and you put an amazing product out there and just example that I'm praying that gets followed in these footsteps, that other people will write more books about lupus, put lupus in more television shows, and make more movies about lupus. So I just want you, if you can, share with everyone one more time, because people pop in and out all the time on Facebook Live, how they can watch it, where they can see the trailer, what your websites are, how they can follow you, and also some people might have more questions, so you might want to pop on here later and just check out the comments.
Oh, yeah, I will. So if you would like to see Standing 8, we are currently available on Amazon, and we are also available on Vimeo. You can visit our website at www.standing8themovie.com, completely spelled out, 8 as in EIGHT. We also have a Facebook page, Standing 8 Film, and we also have an Instagram, Standing 8 Film. And if you want to follow me personally, I have an actor page, which is official Kazy Tauginas on Facebook, and then I have Kazy Tauginas on Instagram. Yeah, that should cover it. Again, Standing 8's available on Amazon and Vimeo, and go ahead, visit our website, check it out. We got some stills on there. You can watch the official trailer there, and the official trailer will directly take you to like the link on Vimeo, or you can click the link on Amazon, whatever floats your boat. And then yeah, we'll be expanding next month.
All right. So before we say goodnight, is there anything else that you want to add or anything that you want to say to our community?
Well, I just want to let you all know that you have an advocate in me, and that this is really just a starting point. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to get the word out until we see some changes. Because in my mind, how I see this thing playing out is the more awareness, the more advocacy, the more people find out, the more donations, the more funding for research that we'll get, and eventually we will find a cure. And I honestly believe that this can happen in our lifetime, and we all just have to be here to support each other, and our voices will be heard, because the louder we get, more people are going to hear.
That's right. So everyone out there, just keep on spreading awareness, keep using your voice, keep sharing your story, keep pushing for government officials in your cities to get the word out there, to raise funding so that we can have better treatments. And I'm praying a cure in our lifetime. So thank you so much, Kazi. Say hi to your parents for us. And who knows, maybe we'll have you on again one day.
Sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you.